My name is Jason, and I am 62 years old. 4 weeks ago, I buried my only son. And just this morning, I stood on the sidewalk watching my daughter-in-law throw everything I own onto the front lawn. My late wife's photo, my father's toolbox, 40 years of memories scattered across the grass like garbage. Brenda stood in the doorway with her new man, a smug smile on her face. She said, "You have 2 minutes to get your junk off my property, old man." I did not panic. I did not beg. Because Brenda had no idea what was coming. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If stories about family betrayal and finding your dignity again speak to you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. You will not want to miss how this all unfolds. But to understand how I got to that moment, standing on that sidewalk with my whole life scattered on the grass, I need to take you back to the beginning. I spent 40 years of my life working with my hands. Started as an apprentice carpenter when I was 22, fresh out of trade school, with nothing but a used tool belt and a willingness to work harder than anyone else on the job site. By the time I was 30, I had my own small contracting business. Nothing fancy. Just me and a couple of guys building decks, renovating kitchens, framing houses for families who were just starting out like I once was. My hands tell the story of those years better than any words could. Calluses thick as leather. A crooked pinky finger from a hammer accident back in '89. Scars across my knuckles from countless encounters with rough lumber and sharp edges. My back has not been right since I fell off a ladder in 2003. Some mornings it takes me a good 10 minutes just to stand up straight. But I never complained. Not once. Because that is what a man does. A man provides for his family no matter what it takes. That was the code I lived by, the same code my father lived by, and his father before him. I built beautiful homes for other people while my own family lived in a modest 2-bedroom house on Maple Street. Linda never complained about that either. My wife understood. She knew every overtime hour, every weekend job, every missed dinner was money going into Marcus's college fund. Our son was going to have opportunities we never had. That was the plan, and we stuck to it. Linda passed away 11 years ago. Breast cancer. She fought it for 3 years, and I was right there beside her every single day. Held her hand through the chemotherapy. Slept in that uncomfortable hospital chair more nights than I can count. When she finally let go, a part of me went with her. But I still had Marcus, my boy. The best thing Linda and I ever created together. And I made a promise to myself at her funeral that I would pour all the love I had left into being there for him. Marcus was a smart kid from the very beginning. Always had his nose in a book, always asking questions about how things worked. I remember teaching him to build his first birdhouse when he was 8 years old. His little hands could barely hold the hammer, but he was so determined. So focused. I knew right then he was destined for bigger things than swinging a hammer for a living. I worked double shifts to pay for his college tuition. 4 years at State University studying computer science. I did not understand half of what he was learning, all that talk about algorithms and programming languages. But I understood the pride in his eyes when he walked across that stage to get his diploma. My son, the software engineer. Linda would have been so proud. Those first few years after he graduated were good ones. Marcus got a job at a tech company downtown. He would come over every Sunday for dinner, and we would watch football together just like when he was a kid. He told me about his work, his friends, his dreams for the future. I felt like the luckiest father in the world. Then he met Brenda. It was at some company party 8 years ago now. Marcus called me the next day, all excited, telling me about this amazing woman he had met. She worked in marketing, he said. Smart, beautiful, ambitious. I could hear the happiness in his voice, and that made me happy too. All I ever wanted was for my boy to find someone who would love him the way his mother loved me. I met Brenda for the first time about a month later. Marcus brought her over to the house for Sunday dinner. She was pretty, I will give her that. Blonde hair, green eyes, a smile that seemed just a little too perfect. But there was something in her eyes that bothered me. A coldness. A calculating look like she was sizing up the house, the furniture, me. Taking inventory. I told myself I was being paranoid. An overprotective father seeing threats where none existed. Marcus was happy, and that was what mattered. They got married the following spring. Big fancy wedding at some country club I had never even heard of. I emptied my savings account to help pay for it. $22,000. Brenda wanted everything to be perfect, and Marcus could not say no to her. I watched my son at that altar looking at his bride like she hung the moon, and I pushed my doubts aside. Maybe I was wrong about her. People deserve the benefit of the doubt. But things changed after the wedding. Slowly at first, so gradually, I almost did not notice. The Sunday dinners became every other Sunday, then once a month, then only on holidays. When I called Marcus, Brenda always seemed to be in the background, and the conversations got shorter and shorter. My son was drifting away, and I did not know how to stop it. I tried to stay involved, offered to help with projects around their apartment, invited them over for barbecues. But there was always an excuse. Brenda was tired. They had plans. Maybe next time. I learned to stop asking. Then 3 years ago, Marcus called me with news that changed everything. He was in trouble. Bad trouble. Brenda had convinced him to invest in some real estate scheme that a friend of hers was running. They had put in almost everything they had, and the whole thing collapsed. Turned out the friend was a con artist who disappeared with everyone's money. Marcus and Brenda were drowning in debt, and the bank was threatening to take their apartment. On top of that, Brenda had found a house she absolutely had to have. A 4-bedroom colonial in a nice neighborhood way beyond their means. But she had her heart set on it, and Marcus never could say no to Brenda. He asked me for help. My son, my pride and joy, swallowing his pride to ask his old man for money. I could hear the shame in his voice, and it broke my heart. I did not hesitate. Not for a second. I sold the house on Maple Street, the house where Linda and I had raised our son, the house where I had held her hand as she took her last breath, the house that held 40 years of memories in its walls. I sold it for $280,000, and I gave every single penny to Marcus. There was only one condition. I would move into the basement of their new house. Nothing fancy, just a small room where I could sleep and stay out of the way. Marcus promised me I would always have a home with them. He looked me right in the eye and said, "Dad, I will take care of you for the rest of your life. I swear it." Brenda was there when he said it. She did not look happy, but she did not object either. Just pressed her lips together in a thin line and nodded once. I should have paid more attention to that look. But I was too busy being grateful that I could help my son, that I would get to be close to him again. I moved in 2 weeks later with everything I owned packed into a dozen cardboard boxes. My father's toolbox passed down through 3 generations. Photo albums filled with pictures of Linda and Marcus. The watch Linda gave me for our 30th anniversary, the one she saved up for months to buy. These were my treasures. The only things that mattered. I told myself this was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild my relationship with my son. I had no idea I was walking into a nightmare. The basement room was nothing like what I had imagined. It was small, maybe 10 feet by 12 feet, with concrete walls that sweated moisture in the summer and held the cold in the winter. No windows, just a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, and a small bathroom with a shower that only ran cold water half the time. But I made it my own. I painted the walls a warm cream color to brighten things up, put down an old rug I found at a thrift store, set up my bed against one wall and a small table where I could eat my meals, and right there on the nightstand, I placed the photo of Linda from our wedding day. Every night before I fell asleep, I would look at that picture and talk to her, tell her about my day, ask her if I was doing the right thing. I hung a small shelf above my bed and arranged my father's toolbox there like a shrine. That toolbox had built my career, my life, my family. Just looking at it reminded me of who I was, where I came from. No matter how small that basement room was, it was still home as long as I had these pieces of my history with me. Brenda established the rules quickly, though she never wrote them down or stated them directly. They were just understood. Expectations that I was supposed to figure out on my own or face her cold displeasure. I was not to come upstairs when they had guests. Too embarrassing to explain the old man living in the basement. I was not to use the kitchen when Brenda was cooking, which seemed to be whenever I got hungry. I was to eat my meals only after they had finished theirs, using the leftovers they did not want. I was not allowed to invite anyone over to visit me. That was her house, she reminded me with her eyes every time the subject came near. And I was not a guest. I was something less. Something in between a tenant and a burden. Marcus saw what was happening. I know he did. A few times he started to say something started to stand up for me. But Brenda would cut him off with a look or a word, and he would shrink back. My strong, smart son reduced to silence in his own home. I told myself it was not his fault. Brenda had some kind of hold on him that I did not understand, and I did not want to make things worse by causing conflict. So I followed the rules. I stayed invisible. I ate cold leftovers in my basement room and told myself that at least I was close to my son. The only bright spot in those days was Dorothy. Dorothy Whitman lived 3 houses down a 70-year-old widow who had been alone since her husband Frank passed away 6 years ago. I met her one afternoon when I was taking a walk around the neighborhood trying to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the basement for a little while. She was standing in her front yard, staring up at her roof with a worried expression. Turns out she had a leak. Every time it rained, water dripped into her bedroom, and she could not afford to hire someone to fix it. I offered to take a look, and 3 hours later I had patched the damaged shingles and sealed the flashing around her chimney. She tried to pay me, but I refused. That became our routine. Every week or two, I would find something to fix at Dorothy's house. A leaky faucet, a broken fence post, a door that would not close properly. In return, she would insist I stay for dinner. Real home-cooked meals, the kind I had not had since Linda passed. Pot roast and mashed potatoes, chicken and dumplings, apple pie made from scratch. But more than the food, Dorothy gave me something I desperately needed. Someone to talk to. Someone who listened without judgment, who understood what it was like to be old and alone and sometimes invisible to the world. One evening, over coffee and peach cobbler, I found myself telling her about Brenda, the rules, the coldness, the way she looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. Dorothy set down her coffee cup and looked at me hard. "Jason," she said, "you need to stand up for yourself. You gave them everything. You deserve better than this." I shook my head. She is my son's wife. I do not want to cause trouble for Marcus. Honey, trouble is already there whether you cause it or not. You just cannot see it yet. I did not understand what she meant at the time, but I would. Soon enough, I would understand everything. It was a Thursday afternoon in late September when I saw the first sign, I had been at Dorothy's house helping her clear some dead branches from her backyard. Finished earlier than expected and headed home walking slowly down the sidewalk enjoying the cool autumn air. There was a car in the driveway I did not recognize. A silver BMW, shiny and expensive looking. Not the kind of car anyone in our neighborhood usually drove. I figured maybe Brenda had a visitor, some friend from work or something. I came in through the side door like I always did, heading straight for the basement stairs. But I stopped when I heard voices from the living room. Brenda's voice, low and warm in a way I had never heard before. And a man's voice. Not Marcus. Someone else. I should have kept walking. Should have minded my own business. But something made me pause, made me peer around the corner just enough to see. Brenda was standing at the front door saying goodbye to a tall man with dark hair and an expensive suit. He was leaning in close to her, much too close, and she was smiling up at him with a look I recognized. It was the way Linda used to look at me. The man left and Brenda stood there in the doorway for a moment, watching his car pull away. Then she turned and saw me standing there. Her face went cold. "What are you doing up here?" "I just got home," I said. "Who is that? None of your business." She walked past me toward the kitchen. "Stay in your room." But I had seen his face. I knew who he was. Derek Sullivan. I remembered him from the wedding. He had been one of Marcus's groomsmen, a college friend from their fraternity days. They had been close once or so, Marcus had told me. Had not seen much of each other in recent years. So why was he here now in the middle of a weekday when Marcus was at work? And why was Brenda looking at him like that? I buried my suspicions deep. Told myself I was imagining things, seeing betrayal where there was none. What kind of person suspects their daughter-in-law of something so terrible based on one brief glimpse? I was an old man, lonely and isolated. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But the doubt had been planted. And in the weeks that followed, I watched. I paid attention. And I kept my mouth shut, praying I was wrong about what I was seeing. The night everything changed started like any other evening. It was a Friday in early November, already dark by 5:30. I was in my basement room reading a paperback Western I had picked up at the library when I heard the front door slam upstairs. Marcus was home. I could tell by the heavy footsteps the way he walked when he was tired from a long week at work. I heard him call out to Brenda, heard her respond from somewhere in the house. Then maybe 20 minutes later, the sound started. Raised voices. Not just a normal disagreement, but real shouting. Marcus's voice louder than I had ever heard it, filled with something I could not quite identify. Pain, maybe. Or disbelief. Brenda's voice cut through cold and sharp. I could not make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Defensive. Dismissive. The way she always sounded when she was cornered. Then footsteps. Heavy, fast, coming down the stairs. I heard the front door burst open, heard Marcus's car start in the driveway. Tires squealed as he pulled out. I came up the basement stairs, my heart pounding. Brenda was standing in the foyer, arms crossed over her chest, staring out the window at the empty driveway. Rain had started to fall, streaking the glass. "What happened?" I asked. "Where is Marcus going?" She did not even look at me. "Go back to your room, old man." "Brenda, it is raining." He seemed upset. "What did you say to him?" Now she turned. Her eyes were like green ice. "I said go back to your room. This is none of your concern." I wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers. But the look on her face stopped me cold. There was something there I had not seen before. Not just coldness, but something darker. Something that frightened me. I went back to my room. But I did not sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, listening to the rain, watching the clock, waiting for the sound of Marcus's car, pulling back into the driveway. The call came at 3:17 in the morning. I had finally dozed off, still sitting up, the paperback fallen from my hands. My phone's ring cut through the silence like a scream. I fumbled for it, saw an unknown number answered with a voice thick from sleep. "Is this Jason Mitchell?" "Yes." "Who is this?" "Sir, this is Officer Hernandez with the state police. I am calling about your son, Marcus Mitchell." The world stopped. Everything stopped. I remember gripping the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "There has been an accident," the officer continued. "I am so sorry. Your son's vehicle struck a guardrail on Highway 12 around 10:30 this evening. He was pronounced dead at the scene." I do not remember what I said. I do not remember hanging up the phone. The next thing I knew, I was sitting on the floor of my basement room, staring at nothing, while something inside me shattered into a million pieces. My boy. My Marcus. Gone. I made it to the hospital somehow. I do not remember driving, do not remember parking. Just remember running down those endless white hallways looking for someone, anyone who could tell me it was not true. That there had been a mistake. There was no mistake. They took me to a room where Marcus lay on a metal table covered with a white sheet. His face was peaceful, almost like he was sleeping. But I could see the bruise on his forehead, the small cut above his eye. Evidence of the impact that had taken him from me. I stood there for a long time, holding his hand, telling him things I should have said years ago, that I was proud of him, that I loved him more than my own life, that I was sorry I had not protected him better. Brenda arrived about an hour later. She burst through the doors, crying, mascara running down her cheeks, making a scene for the nurses and doctors. But when she looked at Marcus, when she thought no one was watching, I saw something else flicker across her face. Relief. The funeral was 5 days later. I handled all the arrangements because Brenda said she was too distraught. Picked out the casket, the flowers, the hymns for the service. Wrote the obituary and the eulogy. Stood at the front of that church and spoke about my son while Brenda sat in the front pew, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Derek was there. I noticed him the moment he walked in. He stood near the back during the service, but at the reception afterward, he found his way to Brenda's side. I watched him put his hand on the small of her back, lean in close to whisper something in her ear. She did not pull away. One of Marcus's co-workers came up to me while I was standing alone by the coffee table, a young man named Ryan who had worked with my son for years. "Mr. Mitchell," he said, voice low. "I am really sorry. Marcus was a good man." "Thank you, son." Ryan hesitated, looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Sir, I do not know if I should tell you this, but Marcus, he found out something. A couple weeks ago. He came into work looking like he had not slept, and when I asked what was wrong, he just said he had discovered his whole life was a lie." I felt my stomach clench. "Did he say what he meant by that?" "No, sir. But whatever it was, it hit him hard. I have never seen him like that. I thought you should know." I thanked him and watched him walk away. Then I looked across the room at Brenda, still standing close to Derek, accepting condolences with her perfect sad smile. What had Marcus discovered? The days after the funeral blurred together. I could not eat, could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my son's face on that hospital table. Every silence reminded me of the conversations we would never have. But life in the house went on. And Brenda did not waste much time putting away her widow's mask. 2 weeks after we buried Marcus, I heard laughter from upstairs. Real laughter, the kind that comes from joy. I crept up the stairs and peered through the crack in the door. Brenda and Derek were sitting on the couch together, a bottle of wine open on the coffee table, He had his arm around her, and she was leaning into him, smiling, relaxed. Like a woman without a care in the world. Like a woman who had not just buried her husband. I went back to my room and sat in the darkness for a long time. The pieces were coming together now, forming a picture I did not want to see. But I could not look away anymore. That night I went through the boxes of Marcus's belongings that Brenda had already started packing up. She claimed she could not bear to look at his things, so she had shoved them all into the garage, probably planning to throw them away when she thought no one was paying attention. In the bottom of a box of files from his desk, I found an envelope, sealed with my name written on the front in Marcus's handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before I found the courage to open it. The morning everything changed started quietly enough. I woke up in my basement room at 6:30, same as always. Lay there in the darkness for a few minutes, feeling the weight of grief pressing down on my chest, like it did every morning since Marcus died. But this morning was different. This morning I heard movement upstairs earlier than usual. Footsteps, heavy ones. Derek's footsteps. He had started staying over openly now, not even pretending to hide it anymore. I got dressed slowly, putting on my old flannel shirt and work pants, slipped Marcus's letter into the inside pocket right next to my heart. I had read it so many times now, I had the words memorized, but I kept it close anyway. It was the last thing my son ever wrote, and I was not letting it out of my sight. Around 8 o'clock, I heard Brenda call my name from the top of the basement stairs. Her voice was different today. Colder, if that was even possible. More certain of itself. "Jason, come up here. Now." I climbed the stairs and found them waiting for me in the living room. Brenda stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, chin lifted like a queen addressing a peasant. Derek lounged on the couch, legs spread wide, a smirk on his face. "Sit down," Brenda said. "We need to talk." I did not sit. "What about—" She exchanged a look with Derek, then turned back to me. "Things are going to change around here, Jason. I need my space. I need to heal. And I cannot do that with you lurking around in the basement like some kind of ghost." "Lurking," I repeated. "I have been living here, in the home I paid for." Brenda laughed. It was not a nice sound. "You paid Marcus. Marcus paid for the house. And now Marcus is gone. That makes this my house. My name is on the deed, Jason, mine. And I am telling you, it is time to go." I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly, more like a cold clarity. "I see. And when do you expect me to leave?" "Today," Derek said. "Right now, actually. I am moving in and I need the basement for my gym equipment." I looked at him for a long moment. This man who had been my son's friend, who had stood beside Marcus at his wedding, promised to always have his back, who had been sleeping with Marcus's wife for God knows how long. "Today," I said quietly. "Right now." "That is right." Brenda uncrossed her arms. "You have got until this afternoon to pack your things and get out. After that, I am calling the police to remove you as a trespasser." I nodded slowly, turned and walked back toward the basement stairs without another word. Behind me, I heard Derek chuckle and say something to Brenda about me being easier to deal with than expected. They thought I was giving up. They thought I was broken. They had no idea. I had barely gotten halfway down the stairs when I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy ones. Derek came down into the basement, looked around at my few possessions with that same smirk on his face. "Let me help you pack, old-timer," he said. "Brenda wants you out fast." He did not wait for permission, just started grabbing things, tossing them toward the stairs. My clothes, my books, the toolbox my father had given me. "Careful with that." I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. That belonged to my father. Then maybe you should have taken better care of it. Derek picked up the box carelessly, almost dropping it. Then he saw the photo of Linda on my nightstand. This your wife? She was a looker. He picked up the frame, examined it with a crude smile. Too bad she did not live to see what a loser her husband turned out to be. I moved faster than I had moved in years. Crossed the room in 2 steps and took the photo from his hands before he could react. Our eyes met, and whatever he saw in my face made his smirk falter. Get out of my room, I said quietly. Now. He recovered quickly, puffing up his chest. Make me old man. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then Brenda's voice came from upstairs. Derek, let him pack. I want him gone before noon. Derek pointed a finger at my chest. You heard her. Noon. After that, things get ugly. He turned and walked back up the stairs. I stood there holding Linda's photo, breathing slowly until my hands stopped shaking. Then I started to pack. It did not take long. Everything I owned fit into the same boxes I had arrived with 3 years ago. My clothes, my books, the photo albums, the toolbox, the watch Linda gave me, the letter from Marcus. I carried the boxes up the stairs one at a time, moving slowly, feeling every one of my 62 years in my back and my knees. Derek watched from the living room, making comments to Brenda that I could not quite hear but could easily imagine. When I carried the last box through the front door, I found my belongings scattered across the front lawn like garbage. Derek had gotten impatient, started throwing things outside while I was still packing. The toolbox lay open on its side tools, spilling onto the grass. The photo albums had landed in a puddle from last night's rain. I knelt down and started gathering my things, feeling the eyes of the neighbors watching from their windows. Dorothy came out of her house and started toward me, her face tight with concern. Jason, what is happening? What are they doing? Before I could answer, Brenda appeared in the doorway. She looked down at me on my knees in the wet grass, and her lips curved into a satisfied smile. You have 2 minutes to get your junk off my property, old man, or I am calling the cops. Dorothy gasped. How dare you speak to him that way, after everything he did for you and Marcus? Brenda's smile widened. Marcus is dead, Dorothy, and Jason here is about to be homeless. Mind your own business. 2 minutes. That was what she gave me. The woman who lived in a house I paid for. The woman who betrayed my son. 2 minutes to erase any trace that I had ever existed. I straightened up slowly, my knees aching. Looked at Brenda standing there so smug, so certain of her victory. Looked at Derek behind her, his hand on her shoulder like he owned her. Like he owned everything. And then I smiled. Because in my pocket I had a letter. A letter that changed everything. And Brenda had no idea what was coming. Actually, Brenda, I said, I think I will take more than 2 minutes. In fact, I think you might want to find yourself a lawyer, because this is not your property anymore. The smug look on her face flickered. Just for a second, but I saw it. The first crack in her armor. What are you talking about? You are senile. Get off my lawn before I call the police. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I had memorized the night before. Harold, it is Jason. I am at the house. I think it is time we had that conversation with Brenda. And just like that, everything changed. Harold Pemberton answered on the second ring, his deep voice calm and reassuring. Jason, I was expecting your call. Are you at the property now? Standing on the front lawn with all my belongings, I said, watching Brenda's face as she tried to figure out what was happening. Brenda just gave me 2 minutes to leave. Perfect timing then. I have been reviewing the documents all morning. I am heading over right now. Do not leave that property until I get there. I ended the call and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Brenda had come down from the doorway, now Derek right behind her. She was trying to maintain her composure, but I could see the uncertainty creeping in. Who was that? What documents you are bluffing? I bent down and continued gathering my scattered belongings, taking my time now. I guess we will find out soon enough. Dorothy had moved to stand beside me, helping me collect the tools that had spilled from my father's box. She squeezed my arm and whispered, "What is going on?" "Justice," I said. Finally. 20 minutes later, a silver sedan pulled up to the curb. Harold stepped out, a leather briefcase in one hand. He was 65 years old, tall and lean, with the kind of bearing that came from decades in courtrooms. We had known each other since high school, played on the same football team, back when our knees still worked, and our futures stretched out endless before us. Behind Harold's car, another vehicle pulled up, a red hatchback. The door opened and out stepped Nina, my brother's daughter. 28 years old, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, a camera bag slung over her shoulder. She had always been my favorite niece, the daughter I never had, and she was also one of the best investigative reporters in the state. "Uncle Jason." She hugged me tight. I drove as fast as I could. "Thank you for coming, sweetheart." Brenda watched the new arrivals with growing alarm. Who are these people? What is this, some kind of ambush? Harold walked up the lawn, his polished shoes leaving prints in the wet grass. He stopped a few feet from Brenda and opened his briefcase. "Mrs. Mitchell, my name is Harold Pemberton. I am an attorney specializing in property law and estate planning. I was also a close friend of your father-in-law here, and more recently I was retained by your late husband, Marcus." Marcus never mentioned any lawyer. No, I do not imagine he did. Harold pulled out a folder thick with documents. "Mrs. Mitchell, are you aware of the terms under which this property was purchased?" Brenda crossed her arms. "My husband and I bought this house 3 years ago. It is in both our names. Now that Marcus is gone, it belongs to me. That is how it works." "Normally, yes, but this situation is far from normal." Harold handed her a sheaf of papers. "This is a promissory note signed by Marcus Mitchell 3 years ago. It documents a loan of $280,000 from his father, Jason Mitchell, to be used for the purchase of this property. The loan is secured by the property itself." Brenda's face went pale as she scanned the documents. "This is not... Marcus never told me about this." "No, I imagine he did not. He also did not tell you that he came to see me 1 week before his death." Harold pulled out another folder. This is a new last will and testament properly executed and witnessed, revoking all previous wills. In it, Marcus leaves his entire estate, including his interest in this property, to his father, Jason Mitchell. Derek stepped forward, his face flushed. "That is got to be fake. You cannot just show up with papers and claim a house. I assure you, Mr. Sullivan, these documents are entirely authentic. They have been filed with the probate court as of 9 o'clock this morning." Harold gave Derek a look that could have frozen water. "And you, sir, are not a party to any of this. I would suggest you keep quiet." Brenda was shaking now, still staring at the papers in her hands. "He cannot do this. He cannot just leave me with nothing." "Actually, he can. And he did." Harold's voice softened just slightly. "Mrs. Mitchell, perhaps you would like to know why." He pulled out one more item from his briefcase. A USB drive, small and black. This was found among Marcus's belongings, It contains evidence that you have been engaged in an extramarital affair with Derek Sullivan for approximately 2 years. Text messages, emails, photographs. Marcus discovered this evidence 2 weeks before his death. That is why he came to me. That is why he changed his will. Brenda made a sound like she had been punched. Derek grabbed her arm, but she shook him off. This is insane. You cannot prove any of this. I do not have to prove it, Mrs. Mitchell. Marcus already did. Harold glanced at Nina, who had been quietly recording everything on her phone. And should you choose to contest any of this in court, I assure you every piece of evidence will be made public. Your affair, your manipulation of your husband, your treatment of his father, all of it. The fight drained out of Brenda like air from a punctured balloon. She looked at the papers, at Harold, at me. For the first time since I had known her, she looked small. What do you want? I stepped forward. This was my moment. The moment I had been waiting for without even knowing it. I want you to know what you did. I said, my voice steady. Not just to me, to Marcus. He loved you, Brenda. He gave you everything, and you betrayed him with his own friend. I pointed at Derek, who had the sense to look away. My son died thinking his whole life was a lie. He drove out into that rainstorm because you broke his heart. And 2 weeks after his funeral, you were already laughing with the man who helped destroy him. Brenda's eyes filled with tears. Whether they were real or not, I could not tell anymore. I did not mean for any of this to happen, she whispered. No. Then what did you mean to happen? I shook my head. It does not matter now. What matters is what comes next. I looked at Harold, then back at Brenda. I am not going to throw you out on the street the way you tried to do to me. That is not who I am, but you are going to sell this house and pay back every penny of the money I gave Marcus. $280,000. You have 30 days. I cannot come up with that kind of money in 30 days. Then sell the house. It is worth more than that. Keep whatever is left over. I do not want your money, Brenda. I want what is mine. Derek started to say something, but one look from Harold shut him up. If you fail to comply, Harold said, we will proceed with foreclosure on the property and pursue civil action for any remaining balance. Given the circumstances, I do not think any court in this state would look kindly on your case. Brenda nodded, slowly, defeated. She would not meet my eyes. Derek, realizing there was no more money to be had here, no house to move into, no easy future with a rich widow, was already edging toward his car. Brenda, I should probably go. Let you handle this family stuff. She turned to look at him, really look at him maybe for the first time. You are leaving now. I mean, this is complicated and I do not want to be in the way, so... 2 years. Her voice cracked. 2 years, and this is how you leave. Derek did not answer. Just got in his BMW and drove away without looking back. I watched him go. Watched Brenda watch him go. And despite everything, despite all the pain she had caused, I felt something close to pity. She had gambled everything on the wrong man. And now she had lost it all. The weeks that followed were not easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. I could not stay in that house, not even with the legal right to do so. There were too many memories there, too much pain soaked into the walls. So I packed up my boxes again and moved in with Dorothy, who insisted she would not hear of me going anywhere else. You helped me fix my house 100 times, she said, showing me to her spare bedroom. Now it is my turn to help you. The first few nights were hard. I lay awake in that unfamiliar bed, listening to the silence, thinking about Marcus. About all the things I should have said, all the moments we would never have. But gradually, the weight began to lift. Not disappear, never that. But lift enough that I could breathe again. I started working with my hands again. Fixed Dorothy's back porch, which had been sagging for years. Built her a new garden box so she could grow tomatoes in the spring. The familiar rhythm of measuring and cutting and hammering quieted my mind in a way nothing else could. 25 days after our confrontation, Brenda sold the house. Got less than market value because she was in a hurry, but it was enough. Harold called me with the news, told me the money would be in my account by the end of the week. I never heard from Brenda again. Word through the neighborhood was that she moved to Oregon or maybe Washington, somewhere far away where no one knew her story. I hoped she would find peace there. I really did. Not for her sake, but because carrying hatred is too heavy a burden for an old man like me. Derek disappeared too, of course. Men like him always do when there is nothing left to take. I heard he tried the same routine with another widow in the next county over, but she was smarter than Brenda. Saw through him before he could sink his hooks in. With the money from the house, I bought a small cottage about a mile from Dorothy's place. Nothing fancy, just 2 bedrooms and a workshop out back. Big enough for me and my memories. I painted the walls cream-colored, just like I had done in that basement room. Put Linda's photo on the nightstand and my father's toolbox on a shelf where I could see it every day. Nina came to visit often, sometimes bringing stories about her work, sometimes just sitting with me on the porch, watching the sunset. She told me once that I was the closest thing to a father she had left, and I had to excuse myself to go inside for a minute after that. I started teaching woodworking classes at the community center on Saturday mornings, free of charge for anyone who wanted to learn. Teenagers, mostly kids, who needed something constructive to do with their hands and their energy. I taught them the same things my father taught me: how to measure twice and cut once. How to respect the wood and let it tell you what it wants to become. How to take pride in building something that will outlast you. One of my students, a 17-year-old named Marcus, showed real talent. I did not choose him because of his name, but I cannot say it did not matter to me. Watching him learn, watching him grow more confident with each project felt like a small way of honoring the son I lost. Every night before I go to sleep, I look at the stars through my bedroom window. I talk to Marcus up there wherever he is. Tell him about my day. Tell him about the kid I am teaching who shares his name. Tell him I understand now why he did what he did with the will and the documents. Not revenge. Protection. He was trying to protect me even when he knew he might not be around to do it himself. I tell him I forgive him for the years we lost. Forgive myself for not fighting harder to stay in his life. Forgive even Brenda, though that one took longer than the others. There is a lesson in all of this, I think. Something I learned too late, but learned nonetheless. Dignity is not about winning. It is not about revenge or getting even or making people pay for what they did to you. Dignity is about standing up for yourself without becoming the thing you despise. It is about knowing your worth even when others try to make you feel worthless. It is about walking through the fire and coming out the other side still recognizable to yourself. Brenda thought I was powerless, thought she could throw my belongings on the lawn and erase me from her life like I never existed. She thought because I was old and alone and living in her basement, I had nothing left to fight with. She was wrong. I had my integrity, my history. The love of a good woman who watched over me from heaven, and a son who protected me even from the grave. I had friends like Dorothy and Harold and Nina who showed up when I needed them most. And I had 40 years of building things with my own 2 hands, which taught me that even when something falls apart, you can always rebuild. Every night I look at those stars and I talk to Marcus. I tell him I am okay, And for the first time in years, I actually mean it. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone try to take your dignity away? Someone who thought they could break you just because they held some power over you? And if so, how did you find the strength to stand back up? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. We are all walking this road together, and sometimes the best thing we can do is share our journeys with each other. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and know they are not alone. And if you have not already subscribed to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss what comes next. Share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Someone who is going through their own battle, their own moment of standing on the sidewalk with their belongings scattered on the grass. Let them know that it is not over, that 2 minutes can change everything, that dignity cannot be taken from you unless you let it go. Thank you for watching. For